Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start off obviously with the album, which has just come out. In terms of the influences for that, you're pulling in quite a lot of different directions with different genres and playing with different things. How do you like maintain a sense of perspective when you're making it to know how far to push it and when to kind of rein it in?
Perspective.
Yeah,
in
like
terms
of how far to push the sound and experiment with it.
It's a constant. I think it's a constant tug of war between pushing too much and then pulling it back.
I think so too. I think there's just
You don't think so?
No. I think that the way that we create is that we don't really think about what boundaries there are. We just we're just really really open to trying stuff out, and as a result, there's nothing that's off the table, and there's nothing that we don't try. Which means it's a really long process. That's part of why the album took so long. Is because there's just this constant experimentation. But we're not gonna we might be writing a punk song and then we're like, oh, okay, let's try putting a trap chorus in, or let's try putting in an opera section or something. And so it's you just no idea is too stupid. Is I think basically the kind of rationale behind how we work. At least that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But you do sometimes have to backtrack. It's not backtracking, because backtracking implies that you're regressing or something. But
yeah,
you do all that, and then you have to wrap it up a bit, right?
Yeah,
towards
yeah,
the
yeah.
end. So that's what I meant earlier. There's all of that happening, but then you wrap it up.
Your attitude towards it, you were kind of speaking about there, is that something that's been present from the start or something that you've evolved to?
I think it's something that's been present from the start. I think what we have always tried to be is just be really playful. I think so many artists these days just really avoid being playful and kind of being eccentric. And so I think from day one, part of what we wanted to do was just to be really playful and to kind of play with genres and to see it as this really plastic thing that we could do anything with, and not feel ourselves as being confined by the ordinary boundaries. Because I think once you do, just start creating really boring stuff. And so I think that the idea of play has always been integral to the creative process from the start, as almost very much as kind of part of the ethos.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanna add, if I can, is that I think the process always was organic, in the sense that we didn't really say, oh, let's make this more trappy, or let's make this more like punky. It just kind of happened. We just like, oh, let's try this thing, and then it was maybe that thing ended up being trappy, but we never thought about let's blend all the genres together. That wasn't a conscious thought at any point.
Yeah, it just happens.
The album's title as well has kind of a religious connotation to it from one angle. So I wanted to pose to you a hypothetical scenario. Say tonight, some freak accident and you get killed at the show, and you ascend to heaven, and you meet God at the gates. What would you want him to say to you?
God, good question. What would I want God to say to me at the gates of heaven?
Yeah.
Welcome, kind sir. I've been expecting you.
You didn't fuck up that much after all.
You didn't fuck up that much after all. Yeah. I'd just be delighted. Like I don't care what God would say to me. Like if I made it up there, that would be pretty sick.
Yeah.
So he could say fucking anything. And I'd just be happy to be there, really. But yeah, I suppose something like "Welcome back, sir" would be nice. Yeah, something like that.
And for yourself?
You're actually Christian as well.
Well, I dabble in that, but it'd be pretty nice, yeah. Something along the lines of, hey,
you can scramble
through, and then we'll cut you out of the shot. You can edit him out. Come,
You
do it.
can't stand
You're
there.
creeping me out. Watch out for the camera.
Watch out.
Be careful.
Is it going to be easier to go for you to go around the back? Yeah.
You can include that.
You're my flow completely.
Well, where were we?
Well, okay. So if I was in heaven and I died and God asked, what would I like him to say to me? I would like him to say something like, down there was a trial run. Here is the real deal, and also it's forever, and it's really fun, and all the nice things are here, and you can read books and have fun. I'd like that. I'm very happy.
Read books.
When was the last time you prayed? Do you recall that?
I think just before the album came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, I'll make this just not be awful."
I think I haven't prayed since I was a child. I was brought up Catholic. My family are like half Polish and then half English Catholics. And so I was brought up quite strictly religiously, but I think the last time I prayed was maybe when I was about like 9 or something. I can't remember.
What would you pray for today if you had to pray?
What would I pray for something? What would I pray for something? What would I pray for? That's a really good question. Something really selfish. I wouldn't use my prayer for like world peace or to solve the climate crisis or anything. I'd probably just pray for, more album sales.
Yeah. It's interesting because those are kind of topics that you tackle that you mentioned there in the album. And another biblical element to it, which I kind of picked up on, is you've spoken about how you have this narrator, Cain, that you kind of explore it through. Why did you choose to use like someone else's perspective to examine these things from and not your own?
Well, I think it's still very much our own perspective, but we're using characters as a kind of vehicle. I think that it was a lot more interesting to have this kind of character that I could kind of really imbue with a lot of different complexities and his own story and narrative that isn't necessarily my own. I think whenever you write about yourself, you're creating a character though anyway, because you're creating this extended version of yourself, which is, inspired by reality, but it's ultimately fictional because it takes place within a piece of art. And I think that itself makes it, fictional. But in terms of Cain, why we chose Cain, that's just because I think that he's kind of a great symbol of kind of male violence and of the kind of violence that's inherent in our religions and in our mythologies, and that's a major theme that we explore in the album. So yeah.
I mean, that's something that you've always strived to be against as well, from the beginning of the band with the aesthetic and things as well.
Yeah.
You've gone against that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. We're trying to kind of propose a different version of masculinity that isn't Cain and Abelish. That isn't, just competitive and rivalrous and cruel and toxic.
With these timely themes that you look at as well, how effective do you think music is for like a tool for change in 2020? Do you think you can inspire people to change? Or?
That's a good question. I think you have to have like humility about your role as an artist. It's limited, admittedly, especially when you're an artist like we are, which is operating on the fringes. And alternative, whatever. What do you think?
Well, I don't think music can have an effect of changing society in a political/policy kind of way. But what music is very capable of doing is to change the stories that we tell each other, and the stories are actually what shape the way we look at the world.
Yeah.
And the way we look at the world is what the world is, right? So stories have always been very important. And I guess going back to the album as well. The album's about stories and reimagining of stories, reimagining of mythologies. It's very powerful to like subvert and undermine mythologies and to retell them in different ways. That I think can actually have an impact in terms of storytelling, because I think that's the fundamental way of people relating to the world.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the ultimate aim of the album, is to subvert existing mythologies and to propose new ones.
Do you use music as like a way of thinking through these thought processes and kind of like processing things and discussions you're having with yourself, or?
Partly, I think that there's certain ideas that may be latent, and then you find yourself articulating them through the music, through the lyrics or whatever, and then you suddenly have this idea that you can actually articulate in words as well, but which was beforehand latent.
What we try to do, I think, because Henry wrote all the lyrics, so none of us had lyric writing, but I think we tried in a very perhaps rough and ineffective way almost for the things to run parallel. So for the music to follow the lyrics and the lyrics to follow the music. That was never like, here's what we're doing and do that. It was kind of almost.
That's quite sonic.
We were chasing each other.
That's quite intentional. It was quite an intentional decision. Though, was that we wanted there to be a real coherence between what was happening musically and what was happening lyrically, and that the arc of the album, which in terms of what was happening with the music sonically, followed what was happening in the actual lyrical narrative. That was really important for us.
And I think I personally, I didn't think that you can do that with contemporary music as much. I played the drums, right? I did most of the samples and drums and stuff. I didn't think you can use these things to do storytelling. But if you look back at like non-vocal music, classical particularly, there's a lot of the way that the sonic landscape rolls out tells a story. So like Wagner, for example. I don't want to compare ourselves to Wagner or anything like that, but because that's very pretentious, I understand that. But I think that we tried in this album to have a certain story sonically that evolved and then went down and up again. And we were very conscious about the way that it sounded, through over time, right? So like the flow of it, that was very intentional. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what you said about Wagner there, he almost has like, although it's one big composition, they're almost like divided into chapters and different parts. Is that what you kind of see your album as well, like a continuing story that in each, although it's individual stories, do you see them as telling one big kind of picture, one big story?
I do.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Yeah. I think it's about kind of, it's about the search for meaning and for joy and for love, I think, in a world that makes that really difficult, basically. And it's kind of, it's obviously the backdrop of the album is this kind of apocalyptic present. And I think it's about the struggle that we all are going to have to live, our generation, in our lives, which is that our lives are going to be plagued by environmental catastrophe, political crisis, economic strife, and we're going to have to still somehow try and find like joy and love and meaning in spite of that backdrop and in spite of everything that's happening to us. We've still got to try and do something that gives meaning to our lives. So I think it's about that struggle, and it's trying to foreground it.
And also, I think it does go a bit full circle in a way. Like it starts from the West is dead, and it ends with a war that's looming, kind of thing. So it starts from destruction and sort of a rebirth, and then we go back to, well, not in the same way, but you know, that's always the kind of like circular journey.
The dialectic.
The dialectic, yeah. Poof. Oof. Oh, what does that mean? Yeah.
The dialectic of destruction.
Yeah.
That the place that you're talking about, the kind of post-apocalyptic setting for it, that is kind of the West of Eden. In the title could also be seen to like be alluded to like the UK today, or a lot of the European countries, or America even. What do you think has prompted the kind of political chaos we're in at the minute and rise of the far right and things like that?
I think it's a spiritual crisis in Western civilization in general. I think that religion started dying out at the start of the 20th century and has become increasingly less potent force in society, obviously, and nothing's really filled its gap except this kind of sex and shopping neoliberal society.
Yeah.
I think that the left tried to build something that could replace religion in the form of a kind of humanist solidarity, and then with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the legitimacy of those ideas failed, and what you had at the same time was obviously the rise of neoliberalism in Europe and the US. And with it, the kind of advent of the individual as the unit of analysis and as the unit of everything, really. And so I think that what you have now is this individualist society, and I think that as a result, people are very alienated from each other, people are really atomized, and I think that everything that's happening right now is trying to kind of respond to that spiritual crisis, that gap that's still been left by religion. And I think that as a result, people are turning to these mass movements where they can feel part of something larger, like religion. And so that's what you have with these far-right movements at the moment. And I think that there'll be a bounce back from the left afterwards, because I think that ultimately these far-right projects are probably going to fail. But I think that things will get worse before they get better. Yeah.
What you were saying there about it, we now live in like kind of an individualist society and everyone's quite disparate. Do you think music becomes more important at bringing people together now? And I mean, you've described this as music for outcasts, made by outcasts. Was a sense of community something that you found in music?
Definitely. I feel like art is one of the kind of last bastions against this kind of advent of the individual, or at least it can be one of the last bastions. It can be one of those last points of refuge where you can kind of dissolve into a community and dissolve into a collectivity.
I struggle with that, you know, like I don't with the idea of music as almost as a collective exercise. I can't really.
Do you not think?
It's personal. I just find it hard to when I listen to music, I just listen to music.
I feel like when you're listening to music, that you're kind of connecting to something larger because.
But it's larger than community. It's like it's metaphysical. That's
it's
like
metaphysical.
for me, I miss that middle part where you connect with other people. I don't really.
No, I understand what you mean. It's like for me, it's almost like a singularity, or it's kind of like building towards a singularity.
Yeah.
Because you are just again, it's like this metaphysical kind of mass participation in something, and it's not instant. It's not like instantaneous, and it's not at the same time, but you're kind of all feeding into the same thing, and you're all like taking from the same thing, and it's just a super. I think inherently, I also think the music's inherently empathetic, and I think that empathy is quite a commodity these days.
It's a really weird art form, isn't it? Because you kind of like there's nothing really. It's just time. It's sound waves and time. It's so weird that it's a thing that people spend time doing and listening to. I never really understood.
It is weird.
What's going on, you know?
Yeah. I think that's the main thing, is that it's like it facilitates empathy and compassion, and I think those are the things that will kind of rescue us from this neoliberal individualist era.
I mean, we also spoke a bit about there about how it is a communal experience. It does bring people together. To take it back to a personal level and kind of an individual level, like the society we live in, what's the most personal song on the album for you, do you think?
For me, the most personal song is Mikeys' song.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though I cried to the song a few times. So
yeah, Mikeys' song's an interesting story. It was so I was in a very, very bad relationship, a very abusive relationship, not on my part, but I wrote a song about the person, and they said kind of, I don't like you writing songs about me, don't write a song about me. And so then I wrote a song about myself from their perspective, and that is Mikey's song. So I'm Mikey, and it's written from somebody else's perspective. But it's like a deeply personal song. It's like one that, more than any other on the album, was really written very directly from my life and from what I was like going through at the time. Yeah.
To look at the album as a whole once more, again, do you think overall, with the negative time we live in, your album is a pessimistic album or an optimistic album?
I think that it's short-term pessimist, long-term optimist.
I think it's neither. I think it's like both, It's like factual. It's like, here's what's going on. Here's kind of where we're going. Here's where we might go if we do things well. Here's where we go if we fuck up more. Like, it just... You're
right.
You know what I mean? It's more descriptive than prescriptive.
It's kind of at a crossroads, yeah. It's definitely not prescriptive, though. Yeah, I think we're trying to show the world. We're not trying to tell people how to think about it. We're just trying to like hold a mirror up to it of some kind.
You know what I think? I think this album. I don't think this album would have made any sense 5 years ago, and hopefully it won't make any sense 5 years from now. As in, if it was written then. So it's kind of. I think we kind of like we're lucky that we came together sonically and with these ideas when the world was like receptive to this kind of like confusion.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, I think art always is kind of like a product of its circumstances.
Yeah, sure.
There's like this, I think it's Alan Moore, has this quote about how a window, you're from the perspective of a window can look down at the golden square of light on the floor that's shining through from the sun. And the window can look down at it and think, oh, I created that. But obviously it didn't, it's the sun. And as an artist, as a window, your job is just to keep the glass clean.
I think that's a really interesting, really tender, really fascinating conversation. Thank you very much. Thank you for that.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Cheers.